Hey folks, we are back. If you just joining us, you've probably noticed that BKP is not here, but RFG and BAC, our new names, Rhinestone and Burlap are here.
Burlap.
Hey, we're having some fun this morning, taking over for BKP while he is motoring back up. Speaking of motoring BKP, you know, BKP runs these 10 counties like no man could ever do, and he's got this Honda Accord that he beats up and down the highway. He's got a big old license plate on the front of it that says Larry's Auto Body, and around the facade of the front car on the bumper, he's got paint peeling off. Well, that's because he's, you know, probably eating every bug in North Georgia, running up and down to visit all of his 10 county coverages.
Larry can't help him there?
Well, Larry's been trying to get him to help me. He said, Brian, if you're going to keep that license plate on the front of the car, we're going to get the front end of that car painted so it looks like it came out of Larry's body shop. So what did Brian and Lisa do this weekend? They got themselves a rental car. They dropped the car off at Larry's, and we're going to see a fresh coat of paint on the front end of that car, we hope.
Mm-hmm.
And it, and that burgundy little monster is going to be fresh and new and running like a champ. Anyway, safe travels to you guys. Brian will be back 8 o'clock fresh tomorrow morning. He's going to have post 2 commissioners from Gilmer County. All 3 of them will be here live in studio. He'll have them with him. Let's see. I don't know what those folks' names were. We've mentioned them several times before, but
Woody Jensen.
Yeah, there you go.
Jerry Tusso.
Okay.
And Carlene Ferguson.
Have you got times on those people?
Woody's at 8:15.
All right.
Jerry is at 8:40.
There you go.
And 9 a.m. is Carlene Ferguson.
Carlene Ferguson.
Yes, sir.
You also probably recognize Bruce and I if you've watched the show before. We love to join Brian at our friends over at Circuit World. JR and the boys welcome us with open arms every Friday morning at 8 o'clock. Brian's on with Dr. Bill Whaley doing the doc, answering the
answer, yeah, whatever it is.
In-house, yeah. He's our in-house go-to guy, folks. If you want any questions answered, shoot them into chief@fetchernews.com, and they will they'll get those questions fired over to the doc.
Doc Whaley.
Yeah, Doc Whaley. They'll fire those questions over to him, and he'll answer to them. Then we have the All-Star panel comes on. Jane, Rick, and Bruce. Jane, I think, is going to be on a little bit of a sabbatical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Jane does a lot of traveling. We love Jane to death. She's going to be moving and grooving. She's got to get her Sycamore Crossing property ready. You know, we leave JR and the boys at Circuit World, and we go over to Sycamore Crossing when the weather breaks. That's always fun to sit out under the gazebo there.
And God knows when it's going to break this year.
God knows when it's going to break, yeah. But
mid-April.
You know, we'll be looking at Tupelo Tea, and we'll be looking at all of the sponsors over at Sycamore Crossing. That's going to happen. Well, like Bruce said, as soon as the weather breaks. Anyway, Brian does such a great job with when the political season. It's always political season for Brian, okay? But anyway, he does such a great job, and we wanted to. You know, he's got a lot of clips that we could show, but there was one that was done recently with 7th District Representative Doug Collins that I thought was good. He talked a little bit about Paul Ryan. He talked a little bit about the omnibus, and Brian pressed him a lot as to why he voted for that. So we thought it'd be fun to reprise that for you this morning. So, Amanda, do you have that queued up for us? All righty. We'll go to that here whenever Amanda's ready. And this will be Brian's segment with 7th District Representative Doug Collins.
Folks, we're back, and I'm joined now by 9th Congressional District, Georgia 9th Congressional District Congressman Doug Collins. Congressman Collins, first, thank you for making time in your busy schedule again today after what took place yesterday. How are you today, sir?
Technical difficulties do occur, but now we're back going at it again today.
Okay, your time is very short. You've got 100 things going on. But yesterday I would not have been able to ask you this question right out of the box. Did you expect the announcement by Speaker Paul Ryan yesterday? Did that come as a shock, or did you guys have this, were you in on the plan, may I say? Obviously you didn't just come out there. What is the game plan for Republicans with the Speaker leaving? Just update us on that.
Well, I think if you know Paul, and I know Paul very well, Paul, this was always been a concern on his heart, especially with his young kids. And in Paul's history, his dad died when he was the same age as his daughter, his oldest daughter now. So this has been something. What I talk about a lot of times is people will say things about Paul Ryan or leadership. They may disagree with policies and attribute them to being other things other than just policymakers. But at the end of the day, Paul Ryan is probably one of the more honorable men that I've ever run across. And for him, this was a matter of conscience. He knew that he could run for re-election, win re-election in Wisconsin, and then he knew he wasn't going to stay, and then after the election say he's resigning. He said he could not look at us or look at the voters in Wisconsin and say that and lie. And so I respect that a lot. Now, does it cause some issues up here for us over the next few weeks? Probably so, and I think it's probably going to come to a head quicker rather than later. I don't think this will hold till November. I think there's going to be some issues up here in the next probably few weeks in D.C. that we're probably going to have to sort out. But at the end of the day, the main focus is keeping the majority, doing what we need to do. And if you look back over the last year from tax reform with the president, rolling back regulations, we've had one of the more successful runs under the last year with the speaker and the Better Way agenda, which the president ran on and we ran on. I think we're just going to continue, as he said, to run through the tape with those agendas.
Well, you said, he couldn't look at the voters of Wisconsin knowing he was going to resign and leave, and he couldn't look at you, the House of Representatives that he leads, and just look you guys in the face. But let me say this, what about the Republican majority? I mean, what about that? What about the commitment to trying to retain that majority? What about the commitment to the American people? Because you're Speaker of the House, you are representing a district, but you're still Speaker of the House. So my question is, how much difficulty does this put the Republicans in between now and November with some things unsorted, unsolved, and maybe some confusion for the voters?
Well, again, and not to make light of it, but I think the vast majority of people, and I say this, who are non-related to political analysis or anything else, frankly, are going to care less whether Paul Ryan stays Speaker or not. I mean, there's some that will care, there's some that don't, but most people want to care about who they're electing in their local district. I can't think of anybody else who's done more in the last year to keep a Republican majority this cycle than Paul Ryan. He's raised $40 million. In the last year alone. He has broke every record for speakers imaginable, and he's continuing and raises. And as late as last week, raised $5.9 million last week. That money is going to continue to be there. What we're going to have to do, though, is keep our focus up here, and that we don't turn into a match in which we take our eyes off the ball, worried more about who's going to get an elected office within the conference as we are about getting the Pennsylvania seats reelected, the Wisconsin seats reelected, the California, Orange County seats reelected, the Missouri seats reelected. We've got to keep our focus there, and I think that's what we're going to be focused on. And if people can come together and do that, then the majority is going to be fine. At the end of the day, though, we're going to have to settle this. Our donors have to understand that the Republican majority matters. We've talked about this about elections. It's a really interesting situation here where you have a choice of saying, do you want Maxine Waters as head of financial services, or do you want a Republican, a Patrick McHenry, or somebody else who's going to actually lead and bring down Dodd-Frank? Or Jerry Nadler is head of the Judiciary Committee, or Doug Collins is head of the Judiciary Committee. These are the kind of things, because if Jerry Nadler's head of the Judiciary Committee, all they're going to be focused on is impeaching the president. Well, these are the kind of things that we're going to have to focus on.
All right, but let me ask you this: you brought up retaining House seats in Pennsylvania, and you went on to Wisconsin, you went on to Missouri. Obviously, we know, I think it's 24 seats the Democrats need to take control of the House of Representatives. Are those the areas that you're seeing? Is there a concerted effort to go and try to protect the most seats, the seats that are really up for grabs at Democrats? Is there that How big is the concern that there's a blue wave?
Very much so. There's a huge concern that it's building. It's not there yet. We still feel that we can keep the majority, but we're going to have to work, and Republicans are going to have to show up at the polls. And what we just saw, and I just talked to Scott Walker, governor of Wisconsin. They just had another election. They've had a couple of little smaller elections that went Democrat to from Republican to Democrat, but they just had a statewide Supreme Court race in which a liberal Supreme Court person now basically beat very handily a conservative jurist up there in a statewide race. What he saw was, and what he and I talked about, was the fact that the Democrat turnout and fervor is extremely high. And they're turning out probably, if you want to compare it to 2010 and the Republican wave that came in 2010. That fervor that Republicans will go and vote, and Democrats who had just had elected President Obama, had gotten several things they wanted, were staying at home. This is something that we see typically in midterm elections, but it's not just the seats. I was in a seat recently, and I've looked at some polling data in which we've got suburban seats in which Republicans hold right now and won by 3 or 4 points, 4 or 5 points, in which the president is 25 points upside down, in which our incumbents are right now even in these races. These are races that if we don't keep, we lose the majority. And it's not just in Pennsylvania, where, by the way, redistricting killed us up there. We're going to probably lose 3 to 4 seats in Pennsylvania, not because of anything else, except they just redistricted out of the competitive nature of these seats.
What would you say to somebody that said, and Congressman, I try to frame the questions in the discussion. What would you say to somebody that just said, well, that you laid the groundwork to say that these districts were the president's 25 points upside down for the reason why the Republicans would lose those districts? I mean, how many districts in that frame are we looking at that is a concern for the Republicans this November?
A bunch. There are a lot of those suburban districts in which the polling is not as good as we wanted. Now, does it mean necessarily, Brian, that number is what caused this? What I'm doing, and what and I'm working with our candidates all across the country, is to make these races local. All I'm saying is that shows the fervor right now of Democrats who want to come out, who are furious with what I believe has been a great administration. President Trump working to roll back regulations and strengthen our military, doing tax cuts, doing all those things. They don't like. They've been from minute one, since November of 16, they have been only focused on November of 18. That's all they're focused on.
Right.
What it shows is an intensity factor, and that's something we can't ignore. And I think what's going to happen, though, is in some of these seats in which the numbers are not as good for us. What is good is the individual representative is in that race is competitive or winning. We just got to keep that focus, because we've got to have our people turn out and make sure that they're voting. If they're not voting, we can lose some of these seats. And I think that's going to be an interesting, topic as we look across the country, and even starting in Georgia. Maybe not this election, but it could be this election, where you're going to see turnouts in districts like Rob Woodall's district. We saw it in Karen Handel's district, in which have been traditionally solid Republican seats, in which those numbers are much tighter than they have been.
Well, I will say this, not to just get into the weeds, but not just congressional. Here in Georgia, there's a record number of Democrats on the ballots for either further down ballot elections than have been in the past. Okay, here's my one question.
And there's a reason for that, Brian. And there's a reason for that.
Yeah,
and that is because they're concerned. They want a Democrat on the ballot every place in November, and also in the primary, because of the governor's race.
Right, exactly. They want people to come out to vote for to vote for their local candidates and vote for governor. I'm with you.
There you go.
Okay, why? This is the question, and let me just say this, and I'm going to just say it like this. In the voter's mind, okay, Republicans, Planned Parenthood is still funded. For the general voter's mind, still funded. Obamacare is still there. Omnibus spending bills that did not cut deficit. The list goes on for conservatives and even moderate Republicans that promises were made. So let me ask you, in general, for maybe speaking for all Republicans, I know you can't in the House, but why should the people come out and vote for Republicans? What is in the Republican platform for them to come out and vote for?
Okay, well, number one, let's go back down to this. Planned Parenthood, even if it's a perception, the perception is not true. There's no money in the budget, especially that we voted for in the omnibus, that goes toward anything that Planned Parenthood gets. And in Planned Parenthood money that they do get is Medicaid money, in which they do actual medical divide. Now, we can debate that all day long, and I don't want them to have that, but it's the same money that hospitals and everything else get. That's a different issue. The other issue, let's just put it pointedly. If you had the Democrat control, you wouldn't have had tax cuts. If you had Democrat control, you would not have the regulations rolled back. If you didn't have if you had Democrat control, you would not have now had a military that the president promised was fully funded. If you had Democrat control, you would not have over 100 miles of actual concrete brick and mortar fence being built with $1.6 billion that is in the omnibus on the border. You would not have the regulatory rollback at EPA. You would not have Dodd-Frank being repealed. You know, I can run a list, and we can debate the perfection or non-perfection, but when you get to, I get really passionate about this. I get really upset about Obamacare because we in the House have done it. I am tired of being blamed for the Obamacare issue in the House because the Senate is where the problem is. They killed Rand Paul, a lot of those guys over there killed John McCain, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski. They killed Obamacare last year. They kept Obamacare. And they kept it without, we had $800 billion in mandatory spending cuts last year that they just thumbed their nose out. So I think when you look at this, we can go to political issues. If you want more gun control, elect a Democrat. If you want a Supreme Court or justice that Trump can't get elected, then elect a Democrat. The issue is there is differences between the parties. There's things that people have promised, to say that you can do away with stuff without taking into account the 60-vote rule in the Senate. That's just not true. You have to deal with the realities until the Senate does what they're going to do. But all those things that I listed, if you don't like tax cuts, if you don't like regulatory rollback, if you like Dodd-Frank, if you like having our military spending cut, if you like having all these things, then vote for a Democrat.
Okay, I know you got to go, so I'll ask you this one. I always ask you this, but every day there's an attack by the media, some on the other side of the media, on our President of the United States. We are now into a situation that out here, I call it out here, and you know where we are at here in LJ, Georgia. Out here, the information says, hey, there's no Russian collusion. There's no, really the Russians did not affect this last election, and we don't want to go down that road. But we're now up to a special counsel that the American people are paying the bill for that is looking for information on a porn star, and I hate to bring it up like that, a Playboy bunny, and an Access Hollywood tape. I know it's not that simple, but for us out here, is there an end in sight for this special counsel? Is there any end in sight for this, or is this just something that's going to continue day after day? And can Republicans put a stop to this?
Well, I think the issue at this point, I think there should be an end to it. I'm hoping it's coming to an end fairly soon. The Inspector General report from the DOJ is coming out very soon. Again, that shows some of the issues that many of us have been talking about, the different standards that have been used over the past couple of years to investigate. And at the end of the day, the president, has been rightfully said they found nothing. Mueller has said they found, at this point in time, nothing has come out on collusion. So I think at the end of the day, it's time for either, as I've said before, it's either time to come to a conclusion that something happened or land the plane. It's one or the other. And so I think that's what our push is to get this done. But also I think at the same point in time is that what we need to be focused on right now, the president needs to be focused on, and others, is don't let the distractions of the left or distractions of investigations take us away from what we're positively doing. And I think that's the voter message that we've got to carry out. That's the message that Americans need to carry out, is these distractions that the left are going to throw out at us. Fine, let's focus on the things that matter. Tax cuts, job creation, regulatory rollback, having our military as strong as it's ever been, and also looking at the fact that we're now actually negotiating with North Korea. Who would have thought that a year and a half ago? When we're actually in Syria, when ISIS is gone. when we're actually showing Putin for what Putin is, and that is a Cold War thug who is supporting a rogue regime. So these are the kind of things, Brian, it's easy to concentrate on the negatives, but what we as Republicans, and we've always been this party since Ronald Reagan, we are the happy warriors. We have got to be out there selling the message that these things are happening. These things are moving forward. We may not get 100 yards at a time, but we got 90 yards at a time. We got to celebrate. We've got to take actually a playbook from the Democrats in that regard. We've got to be willing to accept 80%, just like Ronald Reagan was, and say, we'll come back and get to 20% later. But if we keep focusing on the negatives, then the voter turnout will be suppressed, people won't come to vote, and we will lose seats, and they will be seeing a picture that nobody wants to see, and that's a gavel in the hand of Nancy Pelosi. And if we keep it up, that's what's going to happen.
Next speaker, Scalise or McCarthy, is that the two choices? And have you made a decision on who you would support for the next speaker? What's going on there?
Well, yeah, we'll see what happens the next little bit. I think it's going to probably happen sooner than later, and we'll see. But I think you got McCarthy, Scalise. I mean, they're in line right now, and to move, you know, if they move up, I think that'll be the choices. We'll see what happens. I mean, I've learned up here, especially in these regards, this is the worst kind of, you know, discussion, because everybody, you know, sort of wants to be nice to everybody. It's just going to be a discussion. But I think McCarthy and Scalise, probably in that order, is probably, you know, is the votes that are out there. So we'll just see how it happens.
You still support the President of the United States?
I have every time I'm on the TV and everywhere else. In fact, we're working together to actually, here's the deal, I'm supporting him to actually move his agenda. Actually to move his prison reform agenda and to move his, you know, tax reform agenda, to move these agendas. That's what we've been working on. I talk with the White House most every, our office talks with him most every day.
Okay, well, if you talk to him every day, could you tell him to retweet something from me? I'm sorry. Just say there's a guy. Just say I know a guy. Could you just hit retweet or something? All right, Congressman, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on today. And you know, and that's the question we're asking: is why? What is the platform? What to bring Republicans out? And I do think there's a lot. I kind of leave. You know me well enough. I leave it open for you to say what you need to say. But I want to say to our audience, I agree with you. I've been told we got to go. I agree with you when you start looking at the EPA cuts, Dodd-Frank, and what's going on with the engine of this economy. Have a great day. I'm getting the hook, and I know you are too. I know you're busy. Thank you. I know you're busy.
Hey gang, we are back. We are live at the office. That was BKP with 7th District Representative Doug Collins reprising a really good interview he did last week. He touched on a few things. A couple of takeaways for me. There's a couple of things I disagree with, and that's the congressman saying that people don't care who the speaker is. My opinion, I think the speaker needs to go right now, get a new speaker elect, one that represents the interest of our president, Donald J. Trump. Get out there, sing from the same hymnal, and let's make sure that we don't lose the House. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you want to see the Financial Committee head by Maxine Waters, then don't show up at the polls. But, you know, one of the things that they talked about was Ryan raised more money than any other speaker in history. You know, $40 million here, $5.9 million there. Are they only worried about the money? No. We need to get a speaker out there that tells it like the president wants to tell it. Okay? So thank you for putting that back up there, Amanda. That was great. So what do you want to do? Where do you want to go?
Syria.
You want to talk about Syria?
Yeah, let's set the stage.
Syria last week, our President Trump, said that he was not going to take it like Obama did. No red lines in the sand. We've had worldwide rules against gassing, using chemical weapons.
Chemical and biological.
Since when? 1920 something? 1927?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah, back, I think after the First World War.
Yeah.
There was so much that was done then.
Right.
Mustard gas.
This guy has done it so many times. Obama didn't do anything about it. You know, Russia came out and said that they would be responsible for making sure Syria, their love child, along with Iran, would not do that.
They would be responsible for getting rid of all the chemical weapons.
Yeah. So what happens? You know, we get a chemical weapons strike. Where did it come from? You know, that's what they tried to make sure that they knew exactly who the culprits were, and it kept coming back to the same
Syria.
band of pirates, right?
Yeah, or their friends.
Yeah. So did Trump just go rogue? No. He made a very concerted effort to reach out to our allies, to Macron, to
Merkel,
to Merkel, to Angela Merkel, and
Germany.
to the British.
Yeah, Theresa May.
Theresa May got support from France and Britain, and did a strike last Friday. He ordered a strike, came to the American people, told them why, and your thoughts.
Well, you know, it was something that everyone sort of shakes their heads and go, yes, this needed to be done, but now there's all sorts of second guessing in hindsight. I mean, should have been a UN declaration. UN. Should have gone to the Congress and got, you know, their buy-in or their vote on it. You know, that would take a year. So there's a lot of issues about, you know, should we do this? Are we, after he announced that he would really like to pull the troops out of Syria after the seeming decimation of ISIS, so he said that, President Trump has said that, but then, you know, the naysayers are going, well, why would you go turn right around and, you know, send 105 missiles in there? So there's a lot of fluff going on back and forth here about the wisdom of this. Are we really staying engaged in Syria? And is it something we want to do? And this was a reaction to chemical and biological weapons, you know, babies being killed and you know, gassed and damaged and injured. And some people are saying, well, what's the difference? I mean, if they get a bomb dropped on them, I mean, they're dead or injured nonetheless. So, you know, why just chemical weapons? And again, I think this goes back probably to the lessons of the past. I mean, this happened in Serbia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, in that war, that civil war, and it happened before in Iraq. You know, Saddam Hussein used gas,
weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah, against his own people, the Kurds. So it's a very emotional thing, and I think that's one of the reasons why Trump just said, you know, basta is basta, enough is enough. We're gonna not talk about red lines. We're just gonna go do this, and so. It's raised this great debate about you know, how much should we do, how much buy-in and approval do you have to get from like groups like the UN or the Congress? You know, does the president really have unilateral authority to go and do this on his own? So I think it raises an interesting question. But you know, from a humanitarian point of view, if you look back over some of the things that have happened in civil wars or other conflicts, I mean, really, this is doing the right thing, in my opinion. Yeah,
in my opinion as well. Not in Hillary's opinion. She came out talking about the refugees and, you know, the juxtaposition. Of course, she's irrelevant anymore. I don't even know why I brought her up.
But that is something other people talk about. I mean, saying, you know, you're doing all this stuff to save people over there, yeah, but then you won't let people come to the country.
Yeah.
Well,
totally different issue, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. The point is, if you get their situation resolved over there, they won't be.
They don't
leaving.
need to. They don't need to be.
They'll
a
stay
refugee.
in their own country. They don't necessarily want to come to the U.S. anymore, and they want to leave Syria.
Yeah. It seems amazing that they can't connect the dots on that simple. You know, simple focus.
But do you think it's a political statement?
Yeah. Do you think? Yeah. Anyway, you know, Amanda came up with a CNN clip that was done. And Amanda, do you have that queued up to kind of follow up? Let's watch that.
For some reason, I couldn't sleep. I woke up, I saw a lot of texts on my phone. I saw the news. I cried out of joy. I jumped. I thanked God. I don't know. I was overwhelmed. We've been asking for protection. We've been asking for consequences for more than 6 years. And today, for the first time, it happened. For the very first time, we see Assad held accountable just for once. Held accountable for his crimes against humanity. I was overwhelmed I felt grateful for President Trump. I felt grateful for the United States. I felt grateful for each and every person who lobbied and called and kept on talking until someone actually listened.
There are people in America, and I hear you supportive of President Trump, and so many people are, Democrats and Republicans, but there are also people over here in America who are saying, all right, so clearly President Trump is motivated by just, as we all have compassion for these just horrible images of these babies who were killed, but at the same time, this is a man who doesn't want Syrians to come into this country with this refugee ban. I want to just play some sound. Hillary Clinton weighed in.
We cannot in one breath speak of protecting Syrian babies and in the next close America's doors to them.
Quickly, Qasim, how do you see that?
With all due respect, I didn't see each and every person who was demonstrating after the travel ban. I didn't see you 3 days ago when people were gassed to death, when civilians were gassed to death. I didn't see you in 2013 when 1,400 people were gassed to death. I didn't see you raising your voice against President Obama's inaction in Syria that let us refugees, that made us refugees get kicked out of Syria. If you really care about refugees, if you really care about helping us, please help us stay in our country. We don't want to come to the United States. We want to stay in our country. We want to stay in our country. With all due respect, this is hypocrisy. If you really care, help us stay in our country. We don't want to become refugees. We want to stay in our country. Help us establish safe zones. Help us stay safe in our country. And if you just give me a few seconds just to tell President Trump once again, please, sir, what you did was amazing. What you did was a powerful message of hope for a lot of people inside and outside of Syria. Please don't stop on this. Please help Syrians stay in their country. Please establish safe zones. Please take out Assad air forces so they won't be able to commit more atrocities using traditional weapons. 500,000 people were killed with traditional weapons, just so people can know what we have suffered in the past 6 years. 6 years.
Folks, that was probably something that CNN won't live down for a while. They're probably regretting the fact that they Skyped Mr. Qasim Eid. He's a Trump supporter, obviously. He's also a 2013 chemical weapons survivor. And to Bruce's point, and to Qasim's point, he doesn't want to be a refugee. He wants to stay in his homeland. And he is supporting President Trump in his effort to hit Assad harder and harder and harder. Make him irrelevant, if you will. I mean, it was refreshing to see that approach. No, he doesn't want to. He'd love to probably live here, but he's more focused on living in his own land. And please, President Trump, keep up the pressure, do what you're doing, and he's supportive of it.
Again, I didn't hear everything Mr. Eid said, but it certainly mirrors my views on this. That you have to like do things. You have to act at a certain point. You just can't be talking all the time and drawing lines and this and that. You have to act to stand up for humanitarian principles. And I don't think President Trump has any desire to get us deeper into the Syrian conflict. But at certain points, you have to step up and do these things. If we don't do it, you're going to have Russia continuing to throw their weight around in the Mideast. And it's a fragile area. I mean, things from Syria can certainly get into Lebanon, can get into Israel. I mean, there's a lot that can happen there. And I think by these actions, President Trump has sent a very clear message to the people that would work against us or would kill their own people. You're not going to get away with this. It's just not going to happen. So, I think it was the right move, and he definitely should be very precise in any future moves, but I think it was the right thing to do now.
Yeah, this is the first time I'm going to thank CNN for bringing that forward. I think they did a good job on really stating what a lot of the folks are saying out there. Anyway, we are live here at the world headquarters of Fetcher News, where again, once we'd like to thank Brian for letting us stand in while he takes a one-day sabbatical. He'll be back tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, as he is every morning here at the office. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one quick short break, and then we're going to come back and do a close. We're going to get Amanda in here. Amanda's our TMZ girl. We're going to call the AMZ, right? Bruce tells me that the TMZ stands for, excuse me, 30-mile zone, little area in LA that I just came back from. Beverly Wilshire, La Cienega, where all the studios are. Now, we've got our own studios here in North Georgia, and we hope that Rhinestone and Burlap are representing him well while he's gone. So let's take a break, Amanda. We'll come back and we'll talk about a few things before we close.